Hey, I'm Jeff and welcome back to another video. I recently got a comment saying they understand the theory of pruning and directions, like how if you prune the top of the plant off, so if I cut off these leaves, the new branches will be on the same sides of the leaves. But they want to know the overall process of how to get your jade plant into a big, beautiful tree like this. Having a general understanding of how to care for these plants is key. Now, very quickly, light is probably the most important thing for this plant, and if you don't have a bright spot, then you need to find the brightest spot in your house. Now, I would say at minimum, jade plant would need about 750-foot candles or higher. I kind of lean towards 1,000-foot candles as a minimum. If you don't know the type of light that your plant is getting, get yourself a light meter and test out the light that you have in your location. Now, a real easy way to tell if your plant needs water or not is the taco test. You should not be able to fold or bend a jade leaf. They're usually very rigid, they're full of water, they're nice and plump. If you can fold a jade leaf and the soil is dry, then give it some water. But if it is nice and rigid, like these ones right here, it does not need water, and this can apply to both summer and winter watering. The last thing is having your plant in appropriate soil. This is a very chunky, gritty, succulent mixture, but if you have it in just regular soil, make sure it is cactus or succulent specific. The reason for that is it has amendments for good drainage as well as airflow. You want good airflow to the roots. There are some common questions that I get, one of them being, how do I get a small plant like this to grow into a large jade? This is the golem jade, this is just the regular variety. Another question I get is, how early can you prune a plant, or when should you start pruning a plant to get it into a size like this? This little golem jade is actually in this hanging pot. I did put a little bit of sand, just silica sand in the bottom, just as a little base layer, but it sits in my south-facing window like this. Now, the secret to getting a plant like this into a form like this is simple. It's patience. Now, please don't click away from this video. I do have examples that I'll show you, and I will explain more in depth. But unfortunately, when you have a small cutting like this, it takes a number of years. If you wanted a big, beautiful plant like this, then there are probably many options out there on like Facebook Marketplace. You can buy a mature plant. But the fun thing is when you have a small cutting, which this plant right here, I believe is about 7 years old now. It came from the mother plant right back here. As a small little propagation, and I've grown it into this big, beautiful jade. Whenever I'm browsing around Reddit or other social media platforms, I'll sometimes see people say, you know, where should I prune on my plant? It's just not growing. I want it to branch out, and etc. The reason why it's probably not growing is it's not getting enough light. So you have to make sure that the plant is getting its very basic needs met. Now, I think I've had this plant in this pot for about a year, and it really hasn't done anything. Now, there's a fantastic saying out there which goes, the first year they sleep, the second year they creep, and the third year they leap. I'm just going to take this out of the pot. So whenever you take a new cutting or you bring a new plant into your home, the first year the plant is most likely transitioning or adjusting to your conditions, and it's developing a root system. So the second year they creep, which means they should have somewhat of an established root system to start pushing out growth. And then the third year they leap, which means that you'll see the plant just pushing out lots of vigorous growth when spring and summer arrives. So that's why I typically say when you have a small plant like this, give it a couple years to grow, and a lot of times they will branch out naturally. Now this one, it kind of bifurcates or goes into a Y. So this was a top of a previous branch, so that's why it's probably already branched out like that. But if you have a single stem and you let it grow for about a year or two, it's probably going to start branching out on its own, as long as it's getting its basic needs met, specifically light. It needs light to photosynthesize. That's the only way you're going to see vigorous growth, is if you have it in good light. But as a general rule, I'll say give it a couple of years, see what the cutting does naturally, if it branches out, and if it doesn't, then you can always cut the top off and it'll promote branching down the road. I'm going to use this plant as an example plant. This cutting came from the mother plant, and I laid the branch down horizontal in the soil. Now, the reason why I'm using this as an example is because this branch right here is roughly the size of what it should grow before you start pruning. And if we get in nice and close, you can see it's branched out in a couple areas. So it's got a little branch right here, it's got one right there, and it's got another up top there. So this is a nice starting point for a main stem, and it's already started to branch out naturally. One thing I wish I would have paid more attention to is the height of the main stem. So right here, where this branches off, there's going to be a node. So there's one, here's a node, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it branches out at the 7th, so up top here. Now if we come over to this one right here, you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It branches out at the 7th node. Now obviously this plant has gotten much thicker over the years. I think the height stays the same, it's the thickness. I honestly don't know if this was the height, the actual height, like exact height when I made the cut, or if it does kind of like, this is gonna sound weird, but if it like swells up vertically as well as gets thicker in the stem. So this right here, this is a nice base, so it's 7 nodes, similar to this right here, 7 nodes. I hope that makes sense. So what I'm getting at is you want it to grow tall enough that you can have a nice solid stem like this, and then you can start pruning it. If you had a small, like tiny little cutting like this with 2 sets of leaves, and I snip the top off like this right there, so this will eventually start to branch, but if you have just a small little puny stem like that, you're probably gonna have a plant like this. So there's only 2 nodes before it starts branching out, and this is what it'll look like. It'll basically look like a Y. And I just brought this plant up right here. This is a perfect example of what a small cutting like this will probably turn out to, because you can see there's maybe 1 or 2 nodes down there. It's branched out close to the bottom, and it's now a Y. Now what I'll probably do is next year I'll take a cutting from the top, and then it'll start to branch out like this. So if I cut right up here, like somewhere near the top, then it'll start to branch out like this. But you can cut anywhere along the stem, so anywhere along here. If you don't like this big, long, stretched out stem, then cut it back shorter. So cut it back halfway. 1, 2, 3 nodes, then cut it somewhere up there. If you want to have a nice, long main support, then let it grow to a little bit more, maybe like 5 or 6 nodes, and then cut it once it reaches a certain height. Now the problem is if you prune back too much too early, you can't get that back. You can let the plant grow out, and it can get all crazy and floppy and just looking like an absolute mess. But you can prune that back to how you like it. If you just chopped it off right from the start and have just a little stump, then that's probably what you're gonna end up with long term, is just a stump and a bunch of leaves. But you can train it to grow in a certain way. Now the nice thing is there is no wrong way of doing this. It's just about the process. Whenever you have a small plant, you get to see it mature and grow, and you can manipulate it in certain ways. Like I said at the start, if you prune it at a certain section, then you know the branches are going to come out from the same sides of the leaves. So I can plan how I'm going to get my plant to grow long term, and that's just stuff that I've learned along the way. I've killed lots of these plants. Yeah, there's been lots of failures, but with those failures, I know what not to do next time. And my plants are not like bonsai trees. I simply just prune them into a tree-like structure. Bonsai is different. It's just manipulating them to grow in like crazy, I don't know, angles and swirls and curves and that kind of thing. But if you're just looking to get like a nice tree-like structure, it's really simple. It just takes a lot of time. I brought this plant in as an example as well. So this tree, this one and this one were all taken at the same time from the mother plant back there about 7 years ago now. We are well into fall now, but in the springtime, so next spring, I'll be taking these plants outside once it's like around 10 degrees Celsius and above at night. These will also be getting a big prune as well. What I typically do is whenever I prune and it branches out, I'll let it grow maybe 2 or 3 nodes, and then I'll cut it back. So this one's already grown 1, 2, 3, 4, it's up to 5 nodes. So in the springtime, I'll probably cut it back to maybe right here. So 2 nodes, and then it'll start to branch out again. That way you keep that condensed canopy. So yeah, I'll just keep cutting it back every spring. If it grows another 2 or 3 nodes in the summertime, then I'll cut that back as well, just so you can keep that nice tree-like structure and you don't have those big long stems. You keep them nice and short. And that's what I did right here. You can see this was pruned previously. It's grown 2 nodes. I cut it back and it sprouted into 2 branches. I don't know what happened right there. Same thing up here. Looks like 2 or 3 nodes, and then it branches out again. So you just end up with that nice branching structure. And if you don't like it, or if it was like this plant, it gets mealybugs or thrips and it just doesn't look good, you can hack off every branch, every leaf, and it'll grow back. And that's what I did with this jade right here. It was starting to get really top heavy. Over time, the lower leaves, they all fall off, and then you're left with just kind of a top canopy leaf structure, and it just eventually gets to the point where the weight on the top just pulls down these stems, and that's what happened to this. Now you can see it right here. It sprouted a number of nodes and branches. So if you want to get leaves lower on the stem, so if it's a bare section like this, just chop off the top and it'll activate nodes. So you can see there's new little leaves and stuff popping out through there. I'm just gonna start moving some plants down and film my outro, but this little branch right here, it's really bothering me. It doesn't look good as it's growing like on the interior of the plant. So I'm gonna snip it off right now. Like that. This can go right back in the soil. And if you send me a picture of a plant this size, don't ask me when you should prune it. Let it grow for a couple years. So I hope this video answers the question from the start of the video, but in all reality, you're not going to make a mistake. There's no official rule of when you should start to prune. I just give the advice of give your plant a couple years just to see how it grows, how it matures, and to establish a sufficient root system to sustain new growth. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to know the perfect time to prune a plant, watch this video right here. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Take care, everyone. Bye.